Hello, friends. This is Story Channel, and today we're diving into one of the most eerie and mysterious places on Earth, the Nahanni Valley in Canada, better known as the Headless Valley. Under my videos on YouTube, I often see debates about what really happened at the Dyatlov Pass. People come up with theories and guesses, and there are plenty of them. But nothing compares to the sheer number of theories and incidents surrounding the Headless Valley. It's truly unparalleled. That's why I've decided to split this story into several parts. In this first installment, we'll cover a few of the most baffling incidents that occurred in the valley. In the second part, we'll explore its history, mythology, and, of course, dissect the countless theories about what might be happening there. And trust me, there are an unbelievable number of them. But before I begin the tale, I want to extend a huge thank you to those who made this video possible. The ones supporting me on Boosty, Patreon, through paid YouTube memberships and donations. If you enjoy what I do and want to support me, you can do so by following the links in the description below the video. Now hit that like button, and let's plunge into our story. Picture this: the north of Canada, the so-called Northwest Territories, a vast expanse of land, roughly the size of 5 Germanys combined, yet home to only about 50,000 people. For comparison, Germany alone has 83 million residents. These are immense, almost uninhabited wildernesses blanketed in dense forests, towering mountains, wide rivers, serene lakes, and treacherous swamps. This is the very land where Captain Franklin perished from starvation during his ill-fated overland Arctic expedition through Canada. If you haven't seen my video on that, definitely check it out. It'll give you a better sense of the unforgiving atmosphere here. Nestled within these inhospitable lands is a 18,000 square kilometer stretch known as the Nahanni Valley. Since 1976, it's been designated a national park, but don't let that fool you. There are no well-trodden paths, no tourist attractions, and certainly no proper roads leading into this so-called park. The only ways to access it are by chartering a private plane or navigating upstream on a boat along a swift, peril-filled river, a journey that can take weeks. In short, it's an incredibly remote and inaccessible spot, yet breathtakingly beautiful. The wild nature of Nahanni Valley has remained virtually untouched by human hands, preserved in its primal state. Hardly anyone lives there, only the occasional ranger on the park's fringes. Hunters venture in rarely, and tourists even less so. The local indigenous tribes surrounding the valley refuse to enter it. They consider these lands cursed. We'll talk more about what the indigenous people say in the next episode. For now, let's trace the origins of this valley's sinister reputation. We'll stick to documented facts only. The first recorded incident dates back to 1898, during the height of the gold rush. A group of 6 prospectors, loaded with supplies, tools, and weapons, set off into the valley in search of fortune. Gold in California was drying up, and the fever had shifted to the Yukon, Klondike, and the goldfields in Nome. People were obsessed with striking it rich. But the Yukon and Alaska were already overcrowded with claimants, so it made sense to explore wilder territories where an untouched vein might lie waiting, promising unimaginable wealth. These 6 daring souls decided to try their luck in Nahanni Valley, and vanished without a trace. In those days, disappearances in the Canadian backcountry were commonplace, so no one paid much attention or even bothered to search. However, a few years later, a hunter stumbling through the valley made a chilling discovery: a small campsite and what remained of the prospectors. The skeletons clutched their weapons tightly, but they were headless. The skulls had been neatly placed at their feet. Even these bizarre details didn't raise many eyebrows. Officials dismissed it as animals feeding on the bodies, dragging the heads away. There was just a tiny notice in a Yukon newspaper, no names mentioned, no further investigation. Now, let's move to the second incident about which we know far more. In 1904, 3 brothers, Willie, Frank, and Charlie McLeod, living in Canada's Northwest Territories, decided to hunt for gold in Nahanni Valley. The gold rush was waning. Everything nearby had been dug up. They reasoned that since the valley saw so few people, it might hold untapped deposits untouched by other miners. After a grueling journey on dog sleds and makeshift boats, they slipped into Nahanni and reached the flat river that cuts through it. Don't be misled by the name Flat River. It's anything but flat. It's a raging, treacherous waterway riddled with rapids. The brothers set up camp on the shore and began prospecting. They installed gold sluices on the streams, simple boxes with sieves at the bottom, placed in the current to catch nuggets as the water flowed through. To their astonishment, the river was teeming with gold. They panned diligently for days, amassing a substantial haul. But they decided to head back to town quickly to stake their claim before anyone else could. They also planned to hire workers and buy more equipment for full-scale operations. They loaded the gold into their boat and set off downriver. But at one vicious rapid, the vessel smashed into a rock and splintered apart. The gold sank along with most of their supplies. Miraculously, the brothers emerged unscathed and trekked back to camp on foot. With provisions dwindling and no time to pan more, they built a new boat and left the valley empty-handed. Back home, the younger brothers, Willie and Frank, eagerly plotted their return. Charlie, however, had had enough. Nearly drowning in the river soured him on the idea. He bowed out. Undeterred, the pair recruited a friend named Robert Weir to join them in mining the valley's riches. In the spring of 1905, they were back in Nahanni. Charlie, waiting in town, expected their return. A month passed, then half a year, a full year, but he wasn't worried yet. In those times, people often vanished into the wilderness for extended periods. He assumed they'd struck it rich and were maximizing their haul. But after 2 years, concerns set in. Charlie assembled a search party. Himself and 4 others from town. They traversed the entire flat river, finding no trace. They navigated massive canyons lined with unexplored caves, places no human foot had ever touched. Finally, on the shore, they spotted a white speck. Disembarking, they found a tent with a headless body sprawled in front. Part of the clothing appeared burned, and an arm reached toward a rifle propped neatly against a nearby tree. Inside the tattered tent lay a second headless body. From personal belongings, Charlie identified his brothers. Robert Weir was nowhere in the camp. Months later, skeletal fragments were found downstream, possibly Weir's, but no forensics existed then to confirm. The only clue? A scrawled note. "We found a great vein, yet no gold was present. No sluices, no signs of mining nearby. Police ruled it starvation, with animals scavenging the heads post-mortem." Charlie publicly called this nonsense. He'd seen the burned clothes himself and suspected local tribes. Police dismissed it. Locals whispered that the trio had panned gold, but Weir, unwilling to share, eliminated his partners and fled with the loot, only to drown in the river. The area around Nahanni began earning its grim nickname, the Headless Valley. Beyond fear, the tale sparked frenzy among prospectors, who dubbed it Canada's El Dorado, convinced it brimmed with gold. A few years later, in 1913, prospector Martin Jorgensen resolved not to let scary stories deter his fortune. He trekked the arduous path to Flat River alone, building a small cabin to scout deposits through winter in Yellowknife, planning to confirm the gold and rally partners. Just days after finishing the cabin, he boated to the nearest post and mailed a letter to his associates, claiming he'd struck it rich beyond imagination. Inspired, his partners geared up for a summer expedition to establish a full mine with workers. But summer came and went with no word from Martin. Hiring an indigenous guide, they reached the cabin site described in his letter. They found the cabin, and Martin, or what was left. The structure had burned to the ground. Beside the charred ruins lay human remains. His partners scoured for gold but found nothing. Police labeled it an accident, perhaps a faulty stove. The incident hit the papers, fueling more interest in the valley. Fast forward 7 years to the 4th incident in 1921. Experienced trapper John O'Brien was found frozen in Nahanni Valley, seated before a lit fire. He wasn't curled in a desperate huddle against the cold. His face was eerily calm, a matchbox clutched in his hand, as if he'd just sat to warm up when something struck him dead. Discoverers claimed it looked like he'd been flash-frozen mid-moment. Predictably, no one batted an eye. Even stranger was the 5th case in 1926. A young woman named Mela Furty vanished while hunting in the valley. Mela, cousin to trapper Paul Field's wife, joined Paul, his wife Mary, and a group of indigenous hunters from Fort Simpson on a summer expedition. They'd wintered trapping furs in the Mackenzie Mountains and were heading to a trading post on the Liard River. Near a stream later named Mary River in her honor, Mela suddenly disappeared. At first, they thought she'd stepped away for privacy and gotten lost. Paul and 5 hunters, all skilled trackers, followed her trail for 9 grueling days. Along the way, they found shreds of her torn clothing dangling from branches, as if she'd stripped while fleeing, ending up completely naked. In mosquito-infested wilds, this was suicidal. They never found her. Searches halted, reasoning she'd freeze without clothes. But the story took a bizarre twist. Newspapers covered it, and an indigenous hunter named Big Charlie reported to police. While camping near the Third Canyon on Flat River, he awoke to a splash. Moonlight illuminated a naked woman on all 4s by the water. She bolted up the cliff like an animal. He described her face as frozen in a grotesque grimace, eyes wide and mad, scanning like a wild beast. Police dismissed him as unreliable, refusing further probe. The creek where she vanished became May Creek. Let's press on to one of the valley's most colorful figures, Yukon Fisher. Swept up in the gold rush, he reached the Klondike but cracked a bartender's skull with a bottle in a saloon brawl. Prospector Billy Clark recalled the scene. Everything was covered in blood. Fisher thought he'd killed the guy, so he fled into the woods. Another account from Hamer St. Peter's. Fisher lived in utter isolation, avoiding indigenous people and trading posts. He'd stock up on tea, salt, matches, and ammo at places like Paul Field's store on the Ross River before vanishing again. Field described Fisher as having developed animal-like instincts from his primitive life. He could distinguish moose, caribou, bear, or human by their footsteps. His end remains unknown, adding to the valley's enigmas. Incident number 6. In 1929, 3 prospectors, George Gilroy, Eddie Hay, and Angus Hall, ignored past horrors and sought gold. Camping at the mouth of Scow Creek, they panned but soon quarreled. In rage, Hall stormed into the woods. Later, his partners saw him climbing a ridge. Expecting him to cool off and return, they slept. Morning came, no Hall. They traced his nail-studded boot prints up Bennett Creek, meeting another group of 4 prospectors. Together, they searched fruitlessly. Hall's body was never found. A year later, in 1930, trapper Phil Powers built a cabin at Irwin Creek mouth, setting traps. Months on, hunters found traps with untouched lynx and fox skeletons miles from Jorgensen's burned cabin. At Caribou and Flat River's confluence, they spotted Powers' wrecked canoe. Reaching Irwin Creek, they found his cabin razed by fire, blackened bones amid ashes. Accounts conflict. Some say Headless, skeleton gripping a single-shot revolver. Others, skull at feet. Officials blamed a faulty stove. Trappers suspected a sniper from outside shot Powers in bed, then torched the place. Incident 7. December 1935. Dog musher Joe Dahl delivered fur trappers Joe Mulholland and Bill Epler to the valley. They vanished. One's brother hired Dahl for a search, reaching their drop-off. Another burned out cabin. In May 1936, hunters at Flat and Nahanni confluence found a fresh campfire. Down South Nahanni, axe-felled trees, likely Mulholland and Eplers, as they were the only souls around. 2 more trappers, L. Lewis and Harry Vandal, discovered odd caches. Neatly folded tarps topped with items like empty tobacco tins or dried wolf paws. The disappearances fueled rumors, but no traces surfaced. With media advancing, these mysteries gained traction. In 1940, the Edmonton Journal reported aviation engineer William Gilbertson found dead in his Nahanni cabin. Details scarce. That year, Ranger Ollie McLeod vanished in the valley. In 1945, geologist Walter Talley and 2 friends explored Nahanni, finding a decomposed body zipped in a sleeping bag, head gnawed off by animals, rest intact. Autumn 1946. Prospector Frank Henderson returned from Nahanni with 30 ounces of gold and a terrifying tale. He'd planned to scout with partner John Patterson, rendezvousing September 15, 1946, then heading to Wrigley Lake. Henderson arrived via Northwest Territories on dog sled with 5 indigenous guides. Patterson from east via Mackenzie River. They left tree-carved messages. Henderson entered alone, assuming Patterson delayed. First night in the valley, camped on a cliff. He awoke to eerie wailing from the riverbed. His guides, awake and terrified, urged silence and doused the fire. The childlike cries lasted hours. Guides claimed seeing white giants by the river. Petrified, they fled east, abandoning the downriver plan. En route out, Henderson found Patterson's tree message. He'd entered Nahanni. Guides refused return, convincing Henderson to join. Patterson vanished forever. Onward. 1957. Leonard Brunkhorst found dead on a South Nahanni sandbar, face down in his blood pool. 1962. Pilot Angus Blake Mackenzie disappeared flying over the valley. 40-day search yielded nothing. Same year, pilot Ned Kval and passengers Victor Gooden, Gunther Herz, Henry Bussey crashed in Nahanni. Month later, wreckage found. Bodies scattered downstream. August 1962. Patrol found Martin Watt's preserved body at Figure 8 Rapids. Death cause unknown, but pre-drowning. Weissman and Mink remain missing. You might wonder, over decades, no one investigated thoroughly? Early prospectors, sure, but by the 1980s, nearly modern times, interest existed. In 1978, American paranormal researcher Hank Mortimer led a well-equipped expedition armed, high-tech. They radioed camp setup and intent to delve deeper. Evening brought radioman Ray Wilson's screams. Emptiness is coming out of the cliff. This is just horrific. Connection cut. Alarm raised. Armed helicopter arrived in 30 minutes. No people, no camp traces. Decapitated body of researcher Robert were found 5 days later. 1980. German magazine Spiegel funded an expedition with 3 ex-US paratroopers, survival experts. Task: month in Headless Valley, documenting everything. 2 days in radio. The valley and we are shrouded in some kind of fog. Silence. They vanished. One recent case. 2005. 40-year-olds David Horst and Frederick Hardy weekend fished in a cabin 125 kilometers northwest of Fort Simpson. Missing nearly a month. David's body in thick brush 4 kilometers from cabin. Frederick's in North Nahanni River, 20 kilometers away. Official hypothermia and drowning. David's brother on the search disputed. Bullet holes everywhere in the cabin, shots in the floor. Not like one drowned, one froze. We found his shirt with a shotgun-like hole. Police ignored, refused to secure the scene. Families demanded reinvestigation, denied. These are just a handful of incidents in Nahanni or Headless Valley. Over history, over 50 vanished. Many found headless, skulls at feet or gone. In the next episode, we'll cover the valley's history, indigenous folklore, and myriad theories, truly fascinating. To not miss it, subscribe. If you're watching unsubbed, hit subscribe. Comment your theories, what's happening there. It'll be fun to read. Like the video, share with friends, they'll love it too. This was Story Channel. Bye for now.